Welcome to the Research Works podcast, brought to you in association with the Healthy Strides Foundation. Your hosts are Dr. Dana Poole
and Dr. Ashley Thornton, and we're here at the AusACPDM Conference in Cairns, Australia, to interview world-leading researchers, clinicians, and people with lived experience
to support your practice in being more evidence-based.
We are back at the Research First desk. I keep messing that up.
You did good then. You did good. We're towards the end now. So there's a lot to say.
We are towards the end of the conference. Yeah. My tongue is getting a little tired. I do apologise, but we have a returning guest at the desk with us today. Nadine Smith, welcome.
Oh, thanks, ladies.
Lovely to have you back on again. And whenever people come back on, we call you a friend of the show. So you're a friend of the show.
Friend of the show, Nadine Smith.
Yep, that's right.
Nadine, you are a PhD candidate at UWA and MCRI. You also are a scholarship holder with CP Achieve, which is very prestigious.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. It's been great being part of CP Achieve.
Yeah. But your clinical background is as a physiotherapist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
And your PhD then, which I love that the work that you do in your PhD, I mean, I've known you for a long time, and this has been the clinical area that you've been so interested in, and to see what you've done now in your PhD and the work you're doing is just so really incredible. And I know you've been really busy at this conference.
Yes.
And there's lots to pick from, but today we thought we'd focus on your paper that you presented that is titled A Core Outcome Set of Chronic Pain Assessment Tools for Young People with Cerebral Palsy, Consensus from Key Stakeholders. So a really important paper, so we can't wait to get into that one.
Yeah. And a really exciting paper, I think. You know, full disclosure, I have some involvement with Nadine and her work, and so I get a little peek behind the curtain at all the hard work that goes into, you know, not just this study but the PhD as a whole, and so it's exciting to be able to bring it to the conference and to the show.
Yeah. Well, tell us, what made you go down this path to have to looking at a core set of outcomes for pain? I mean, what's the story there?
Well, I think everyone knows the prevalence of pain for young people with CP is really high, and it's a lot higher than what we see in the general population. And what was really hard, and it hit home for me listening to the equity statement, was that there was no equity for people with cerebral palsy to access best practice interventions, but because we weren't really identifying it and assessing it, so we weren't able to refer people to get help. So that was the start of it. And then in terms of chronic pain, there's lots and lots and lots of tools available, but no consensus on which ones are the most appropriate from the perspective of young people with cerebral palsy or their carers, as well as clinicians. So we wanted to make something that was very much embedded in what young people and carers of young people want. That's meaningful to them. But we also wanted to make it clinically useful. So no point throwing 42 tools at someone and saying, oh, these are chronic pain assessment tools. They needed to be the ones that clinicians can use, that are feasible to use clinically, and that are meaningful for the young people.
Gosh, you put that so beautifully. That was amazing.
Very passionate about it.
I can tell.
And uni was just doing a keynote talking about patient-reported outcome measures, and I think, this is part of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that, you know, feasibility for clinical use is really important. Everything you've just discussed is important, but can we just talk about what that actually means? Like, I think sometimes, you know, a lot of work goes into designing an ideal outcome measure, but we have to balance that against what's pragmatic. Can you just talk about, you know, what you might typically encounter in a clinical setting and why it's important that we think about that when we're talking about pain measures?
I guess the biggest thing in terms of feasibility for all people with cerebral palsy is just that there are so many different abilities across that group. So there's varying communication, cognitive and functional abilities. And I think a lot of the tools that are available aren't feasible to use for some of those children. So clinicians go, well, I can't use that one. That's not helpful. And then on the other side of feasibility is just the time taken. And that's time for our families and young people as well as clinicians in really busy clinical settings. And if they're not thinking they're getting meaningful information to help guide treatment, to help monitor children, and that it's not meaningful for the families, they just won't use them. And I think there's a lot of assessment all the time And it has to be, you have to be getting information from it that's appropriate. Otherwise, it's not worth anyone's time.
Yeah. And the purpose of doing assessments, I mean, that's often a really good thing to think about why we're doing assessments as well, because there's research studies where we want to assess something, but in clinical practice, you might want to assess a baseline, for example, and compare to see what it looks like. But I guess when it comes to pain, when you're actually assessing pain, what is the purpose of an assessment tool there? Like, why are we performing it?
Why would you use a pain? I think pain impacts quite significantly on quality of life and also participation. So when you have chronic pain, and that's why our best practice biopsychosocial model is needed, and we had big gaps in what we were assessing because the more chronic pain you have, it can impact your mood, it can impact your ability to have fun with your friends and your family, and I think they're the things that are meaningful to young people. And so what we really needed was to move beyond pain intensity. Like intensity, my pain intensity is very different to yours. It's a really personal experience, chronic pain. And so I guess we need to make sure that we're monitoring it and getting people to the right sort of help that they need, not just saying, oh, my pain's 5 out of 10, because in an hour it might be 6 out of 10.
Yes.
No, did I answer that?
That was beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you.
So, Nadine, before we start talking about the consensus and the process that you went through to arrive at the core outcome set, can we just kind of go back a step and talk about how you identified the tools that you were going to include in this study?
Yes,
I know how it happened, but it was a lot of work. So
it was. So there's so many existing chronic pain tools that are psychometrically robust. But what we wanted to do was obviously rate the feasibility of all of those tools and rate the feasibility for a population that, as I said, have varying communication, functional and cognitive abilities. So we used 5 recent systematic reviews to identify all of the chronic pain tools out there. We rated them using the consensus-based standards for the selection of health measurement instruments, and one of the key parts of that process is the content validity part of it, which means that the tool needs to be designed for the population of interest. And so that's a really big thing with cerebral palsy. A lot of the tools are developed in populations other than CP. But we do have some tools with content validity. Okay. And then the CP-specific part of it, we actually developed a tool that asks, can you use this tool for children that use augmentative and alternative communication? Can you use it? Can this tool be used across all GMFCS levels? Right. And we rated all of the tools. I think there were about 56, and then we got it down to about 42 that were valid, reliable, and potentially feasible. And then we went into the consensus to figure out which were the best ones.
What an amazing process, Nadine.
It was very, very thorough.
Cosmin wasn't fun. No. Didn't like it. It was very, I've learnt a lot, yes.
Even just looking at embarking on something that's Cosmin related, you just got to sort of gear in really and just get ready for the whole process. But obviously it has its place and its role, which is why we use it.
And, you can be really confident in your results moving forward because of following such a thorough process.
Yeah, that's right. Well, can you tell us what you found?
So because we had so many tools, we ran the consensus in 2 stages. Okay. And the first was a key stakeholder workshop, and that had carers of people with CP and young people with CP, as well as expert clinicians. And we said to them, we need to exclude the tools that you just think are not helpful. Right. So we voted yes, maybe, no, and we got rid of as many tools as we can. And then we took the tools in the yes and the maybe section through to a modified eDelphi study. And that was really interesting. We sent consensus at 75% for useful or very useful. Right. And then the maybe and the definitely not ended up going through to another stage. And then if they didn't reach 75% consensus, they got excluded. Okay. And what we ended up with was So when you use Cosman, they say that each version of a tool should be counted separately. So, for example, you would count the modified brief pain inventory self-report as one tool and the modified brief pain inventory parent report as a second tool. So there's 24 tools with both versions counted in the final core outcome set.
Wow.
And I love this last bit because we developed a decision tree to guide you down a pathway of what tool would be appropriate based on whether the young person can self-report or if they need observational or proxy. So I think that will be useful for clinicians.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's
really cool.
it's so clear in that document.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that could sit in a clinic somewhere and be so accessible to anyone who, you know, might find choosing an outcome measure daunting.
Yeah.
You know, you've just taken that all away. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And they're only the best tools. They're the tools that the people with CP and the clinicians said were the best. So it's not that overwhelming choice of so many. And we've divided them into the two core areas that we're missing in terms of chronic pain assessment, which is sort of underpinned by a biopsychosocial approach. So we've got tools that assess the impact of pain on daily life, so interference tools, and then tools that assess the impact of chronic pain on emotional functioning.
Wow.
So pain coping tools. So you go down, can you self-report? Yes.
Yeah.
These are the tools that would be helpful. Can you not self-report? These are the tools that would be helpful. And my colleagues at Perth Children's Hospital in Kids Rehab are actually piloting the decision tree at the moment. So that's my final study.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, getting there.
So how many did you end up with out of, once you'd gone through what was the final number of tools that are part of the decision tree, I suppose?
So there's 19.
19.
Yeah, but as I said, there's probably only about 9 different tools. It's just that some of them have self and parent report versions. So it's not too overwhelming.
Yeah. Was there anything that surprised you about some tools like that came through, or were they tools that, I mean, as a clinician, like as you've been working through as well, did things confirm or were they surprises? And
No, definitely confirmed. And, you know, I know a bit more about the tools now, but when I look back, I think the tools that are the easiest to use, so they're not too long, most of them, and they have content that can be relevant to nearly everyone. They're the tools that are in there. And the tools with better language, you know, there are some tools that assess impact of pain on emotional functioning that have quite ableist language. So I think I like the core outcome set. I think all the tools in there are good, but in particular for children that can't self-report and have significant cognitive limitations that are never going to be able to self-report, even with changes to design and layout and things like that. The paediatric pain profile is the best tool to use.
Wow.
So that's my take. That's a good take home.
That's a really good take home.
That's the cream of the crop.
Yes, and you don't need to assess chronic pain. You only need for every single person. It's just for those young people that are coming, and the families will often tell you, but we haven't really had a good way of quantifying that, or then help getting them help unless things end up at crisis. And so I really hope that this brings help for families of young people as well that are trying to manage things like chronic pain with their young person at home on their own. Because in chronic pain in other populations, it's very much a parent-child dyad. It's very much about teaching how to cope with chronic pain. It's very much about multidisciplinary approaches. It's not just, have some Panadol. And I think one of our keynote speakers, Amy, said that to me a while ago. She said, we're still reaching into an acute toolbox for a chronic problem. So I'm really hoping that we get a bit better outcomes for the children we work with.
Nadine, that's just so impressive and so great. Well done on all that work. And I think the fact that you've got this, you're moving on to the next stage now. I often think you've got the immediate impact, like you just said, with that particular measure. But if if we can come up with this set, it also means in further research, we can actually start all evaluating things in the same way, which would actually be so helpful to bringing in the evidence about what we can do and what's not going to be as useful, right? Like the ripple effect is huge, is what I'm trying to say. It
filters out a lot of the noise, doesn't it?
It does.
It's very clear now where to focus your attention.
Yeah, and I think you can't compare lots of studies because all the outcome tools used are different and, there's so much research waste,
So true,
And they've done core outcome sets in other populations with chronic pain. So their core outcome set didn't work for us because we have children that, as I said, can't talk and can't self-report and can't walk. So we needed a different core outcome set, but we very much have been guided by our colleagues in the chronic pain area, rheumatology and all that. Yeah.
Oh, congratulations, Nadine.
Thank you.
It's a huge amount of work and, 15 minutes doesn't kind of do that amount of work justice, but it is a huge body of work and, it's
great for everyone to know that
so,
this is out there and the work's being done, and just look out for Nadine when you're looking at the literature, like look up the work that she's doing. And but I'm sure we'll speak to you again once we keep going through the phases and just really make sure we get it out there. Yeah, it's so vital.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. Well, hope you guys all enjoy that as well. Look, we're nearly coming to the end of the conference here, so just a few more episodes to go, but stay tuned and we'll chat to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.